Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Hillier, and I'm the 8th grade English teacher at CMS on the Blizzard team. I'm so glad you're watching this video to get more information about the 8th grade DC New York trip. You're most likely watching this video because you weren't able to make the information presentation on September 27th. Because of that, I want to give you as much information as you need in order to help make your decision of whether your child wants to go on this trip. It would be awesome if your child watches this video with you. So if you need to pause the video to go get them, that would be great. The financial decision may rest on your shoulders as parents, but we also want to include the student in the decision of whether they want to go on a trip like this. While this video may be a little long, it is highly suggested to watch the video all the way through so that you and your child are fully informed of when, where, and how the registration process works, how the confirmed and waitlisted student process works, how the payment plan works, student behavior expectations prior to and while on the trip, and the payment protection plan. There's a lot of moving parts to this trip, and we want to make sure you have all the information before you make your decision. We've experienced a lot of uncertainty the past 3 years, but we've all learned how to navigate a worldwide pandemic. There have been countless times that we've strengthened our flexibility muscle and have learned to go with the flow. Due to COVID, the 2020 and 2021 trips were canceled, but we were able to get the trip back on track, and we had a wonderful 5 days in DC this past June with 88 students. I don't want to seem insensitive to the fact that, to some extent, we are still somewhat navigating COVID, its variants, and other communicable diseases. I think we now live in a world where there will always be some sort of travel restrictions, sometimes less stringent, sometimes more stringent, depending on the rise and fall of medical cases. The trip takes a year to plan, so that requires me to plan this far ahead. Between now and June, restrictions can change to be more restrictive or less restrictive, and then back again. We've all learned that the past 2 years. Just know that I, along with my tour company, watch this closely, and we will let parents know of any necessary changes. I'd like to think that we are kind of on the other side of knowing all about this COVID situation and how to basically live, travel, work, and play within the world of COVID. Now, if you've had an older child participate in this trip in the past, it is still advised to listen and watch this presentation all the way through, because there are several details that are specific to this year's current trip, especially if your child went during the pre-COVID days. The first 5 years running the trip was solely a 5-day DC trip. Then years 6 and 7, we added New York City, which was awesome to be able to see 2 major cities in one trip. Years 8 and 9 were canceled due to COVID. And year 10, this last summer, was exclusively DC because of the continued COVID restrictions for student travel in the New York area. This year, we've added New York back in again to the itinerary, and we are super excited to get back to the Big Apple. We fly into DC and fly home from New York City and use coach buses for our ground transportation. Each bus holds 50 students and 4 chaperones. Normally, we have 100 spots for the trip. This year, what we're going to do is start with 50 student spots, and then a consideration will be given if our numbers reach a second bus. Based on the number of emails I have received from parents and the conversations that I've had with students in school, I think we will definitely have enough interest for 100 spots like we do each year. Ever since year 1, we've always had 2 buses, and the trip has always sold out. As we've seen over the past 3 years, though, life can have a lot of ebbs and flows, a lot of changes, and so too does planning group travel. The key to this process is flexibility, and for you to know that I'm doing my best to plan an amazing trip in the safest way possible. I am the trip coordinator and have done this trip for the last 10 years. The chaperones for the trip are CMS teachers and staff. A lot of times parents ask if they can chaperone the trip with us. While we appreciate the parent interest, the chaperones for the trip are teachers and staff only. We absolutely love spending time with eighth graders, and it gives an opportunity for your child to travel with their classmates, which is a fun opportunity for them to grow and mature in a new situation or experience, especially if they've never traveled without you before. I always say that there's so much growth that can happen and learning about life when one travels the world. From the moment we depart, the chaperone staff turns into mama and papa bears, and we protect, watch, and guide your child as if they were their own. It is important to know that this trip is fully supported by our school board, our principal, Mr. Baki, and our superintendent, but it is not a school sponsored trip. It's not sanctioned by the school as well. The trip is sponsored by our tour company, which is School Tours of America. The district does not assume any liability for this trip. Our district has been wonderful at supporting our efforts and enjoy seeing this opportunity given to students. Any questions should be directed to me as the trip coordinator and not to our principal or our superintendent. At this point, you or your child may be on the fence about whether the child wants to go on this trip or not. So I think it's important to think about why they want to go. The type of students that we've seen that get the most out of this trip are ones that maybe have a desire to learn about our nation's capital. Maybe they have an interest in exploring or traveling with their classmates. Maybe they have a military connection in their family and they want to see places and monuments that honor those family members that have served. Maybe they want a future job with the government or in politics or on Wall Street. They've got to be excited to travel. And then the last thing, this type of student that goes on this trip is definitely flexible and they know that group travel is very different than a family vacation. What can the student expect from this trip? They can expect an unforgettable learning adventure. They can also expect that we're going to laugh, we're going to learn a lot, we're going to experience things and see a ton of sights. They can also expect that they are going to be safe and well cared for, that we will follow COVID requirements. As of right now, today, for this presentation, there are no COVID requirements in regards to masking for either on the airplane, in our buses, or at various sites that we're going to be seeing. But as we all know, that could possibly change. They're going to return home very exhausted. It is not uncommon for students to return home and want to sleep for 2 full days because they are so tired, but they've seen a lot of great, cool things. It's very fast paced. We are constantly on the move and using all of our time out on and off the buses to see as much as we can possibly see. It's high energy. And this isn't really a pool, beach, hang out at the hotel type of vacation. It's more like a trip. What does a typical day look like? Well, we are up early in the morning. So if your child is really in the summertime not an early riser, they might want to kind of think about that too for this trip. And we are out all day and we come back to the hotel late at night. We do a ton of walking. So it is not unexpected. We have our chaperones. They wear the Fitbits and our Apple Watches, and we clock how many miles that we walk. And within a 5-day period of time, it is not uncommon to see 30 to 35 miles on our Fitbits. So just keep that in mind because most of the sightseeing that we do is walking. Now, we are transported around DC with buses, but when we get off, we do a ton of walking. And then when we get to New York, most of our walking is without our bus transportation. You can also expect that the weather is very hot. So the middle of June in DC, it is very, very hot and humid. And a lot of times you're just sweating standing there. So we go out and see sights, rain or shine. We've only had one trip 1 year with 1 day where it's like rained nonstop. Otherwise, we've been very fortunate to have really, really good weather, but it is also very, very hot. I was very proud of last year's group. It was extremely hot, very humid. Again, standing there sweating, not, doing anything but standing there and sweating. And we had no complaints. Our kids were so great handling and navigating that heat, like they were pros. It's gonna be loads of fun. It's gonna be very informative too. There's a lot to see and a lot to learn. So this is really a learning trip. It's not really, again, like laying by a pool and relaxing or going shopping all day, that sort of thing. And we are out and about all day, getting as much sightseeing in as we possibly can. Some additional questions to consider before making this decision, this goes more for the student, is why do I want to go on this trip? Because I think that answer is really, really important. If the student is just saying, well, because my friends are going, or everybody seems to be going on this trip, so I better go too, those probably aren't the best answers. And they're going to want to make sure, because you're putting quite an investment out there for them to be able to do this trip. So that would be a good question to ask them. Why do you actually want to go on this trip? The next one is, what do you want to get out of it? What are your goals for seeing DC and New York? Also, what monuments and sites and memorials do you want to see? And if students aren't familiar with what they're going to see, maybe they want to kind of start diving in and looking at different places of things that we'll be able to see. And that also piques their curiosity. What are your concerns? Because we do have some students that really want to go on the trip, but they're maybe afraid of something. Maybe they're afraid to fly. Maybe they're afraid that the meals that we have on our trip are not very good, or they're picky eaters. And we can help navigate any one of those fears, whether they're small fears or large fears. And then what's the difference between a trip and a vacation? That's a really good conversation to have with your family members. In the past 10 years, we've had a few students go on this trip for the wrong reasons. Whether their parent was really kind of pushing them, and it was more the parent agenda to have them go and experience this, and you're going to have fun, I know it. And the child really didn't even want to go. Or the child had a different idea of what the trip really entailed because they didn't hear this part of the presentation. Regardless of what the reason is, when a child goes on the trip for the reasons not listed, like in this presentation, it can really definitely impact the quality and enjoyment of the trip, not only for that student, but also for the others around them. And so it's really important to just have a discussion about the why. Why do they want to go on this trip? And I strongly encourage you to kind of dive into that discussion deeper, especially if their reason is just because my friend is going. Okay. When I coordinate this trip, the decisions made are really for the perspective of what's good for the group mentality. And it's kind of hard because we do try to accommodate all students' needs and challenges and issues, but we really have to kind of think globally, what is the best for moving a large group of students through two big cities? I also think it's important that students know there are certain expectations or behaviors while on this trip, and also prior to the trip. Students will also want to, display positive actions in and out of school as well, because that may impact their ability of whether they get to go on this trip or not. And I'm really a strong believer that having agreements in place really prevents disagreements. Transparency is super important to me, and I really think parents and students appreciate being transparent as well. Because it is not a school sponsored trip, as a trip coordinator, I do have the right to cancel a student's participation depending on the severity of maybe the behavior that is being exhibited. Anything like vandalism, inappropriate or illegal type of behavior prior to the trip, either inside or outside of school, and while on the trip, is not tolerated or accepted at all. We do really have to kind of think of the safety and the good of the whole group. A decision to remove a student from the trip is never made lightly. It's never a rash and quick decision. A lot of thought and conversation and decision making takes place during that time, and it's always done with the student, the parent, and me. So we make the best decision for everybody involved. Behavior on the trip is very important, because, again, we're all about the safety of our entire group. And we're no longer in Lakeville, Minnesota. It's Washington, D.C., and New York. And we do really need to pay close attention to our actions so that everybody stays safe. So while that is said, we never expect middle school students to be perfect. We always know that there's going to be decisions that are made that are a bad decision, and it just matters. It just matters really how big that decision is that they made. So when it comes to behavior, we want to set policies in place because knowing that ahead of time, students will be able to help shape their decisions in school from September to June prior to leaving on this trip. So, our behavior expectations is if a student is given in school suspension for whatever negative behavior or violation that they've done inside of school, what's going to happen is the student, the parent, and I will have a meeting to discuss a positive behavior plan moving forward so that we can make the best possible choices from here to June. If a second ISS violation is done between here and June, then the student is removed from the trip because clearly the student hasn't made those positive changes to try to change that behavior to be better. And then if a student receives any sort of OSS, which is out of school suspension, and we all know that when a student has an out of school suspension, that level of behavior is way higher, or violation, I should say, is way higher than an ISS violation. So if anybody receives that from September to June, they are immediately canceled from the trip. So, note if a student is removed from the trip due to behavior violations anytime from September to June, the financial penalty for cancellation for the family will follow the same guidelines under STA's terms and conditions. So, there's no pass that's being given and all money given back based on a student's poor behavior. Expectations for the trip, what we expect students to do, because really the students help make the trip successful. Chaperones can work very hard to coordinate and organize an amazing trip, but really it's all 100 students that help make the trip successful. We also want each student to conduct themselves in a mature and positive manner. We ask they use their 8th grade maturity and we help guide them. And there are huge, vast growth that happens with 8th graders from September to June. And it's exciting to see and travel with them when they are so grown up. The trip will be exciting, safe, and fun for everybody. We do kind of keep that as our mantra for the whole time. Great opportunity to travel without parents and connect with friends and actually make new ones. And it's so fun to see this happen over the 5 days that we're together. Students will positively represent Century and Lakeville and Minnesota. And the cool part is, I absolutely love when we're out and about in the public in DC or New York, and we have complete strangers that come up to us and say, wow, your group of students are amazing. They're well behaved. They're very kind and respectful. And we get compliments like that all the time. And that just feeds into our students' ability to keep going and represent Century very, very well. And then prior to leaving, students will sign a behavior form so that it's kind of like a contract or an agreement to say, this is what I plan to do and act and behave like prior to departure, as well as while we're on the trip. What if we do have behavior issues come up? And I know this part of the presentation is like a lot of on behavior, but again, I'm all about believing that agreements prevent disagreements. If we have behavior issues while on the trip, basically we follow this 4-step pattern that you're seeing here on the screen. The first one is we just give a warning to the student, and we have such amazing Century kiddos that usually this is where the negative behavior stops. They get it. They make the adjustment in their behavior and it's all good. If it does go beyond level 1, then and the behavior doesn't change, then we do have a parent phone call that we place, and usually that's done in private. So it's usually the student, myself, as well as the parent, and we have a conference call to see if we can make some sort of plan positive plan moving forward so that student can still have a positive experience for the remainder of the trip. And if that doesn't work, we go to step three. And step three involves the student basically being within, 6 feet of a chaperone for maybe half of a day. And trust me, students don't want to do this. They want to be hanging out with their friends. They want to be interacting and laughing and just doing all of what we have planned to do. And so this is something that would definitely kind of crimp their style, right? And so we just never really get into step three with a lot of our Lakeville kids because they just are awesome. Awesome students. And then the last one, which we've never experienced, but we do have to have plans in place, is if nothing changes in regards to the behavior from steps one, two, and three, then our last option would be to have the student fly home. And the tricky thing about that is we cannot have the student fly home by themselves. For safety reasons. We can't have a chaperone fly home with that student because we need that chaperone with the whole group. So we would require the parent to fly out and meet us wherever we're at, DC or New York, and then fly home with their child. And that expense of doing that would be really, really high. And so, like I said, in the 10 years that we've run this trip, we have never gone past step two. And that says a lot for our kids, and it says a lot for you as parents as to what great students we have. Why did we choose School Tours of America? Because there's a ton of travel companies out there that we could certainly use, but we absolutely love School Tours of America. They are so much more like family to me than actually a company that I work with. It was a company started by a geography teacher, and it is a family based organization. A father and son run the company. Safety is their number one priority, and I absolutely love that. There is no time on this trip that I feel like we are going to be stranded. We are not going to get the answers we need. We're not going to get the help we need. I just really feel confident every single time we depart from these trips every year that we have the backing of School Tours of America. They're kind and respectful. Many of the staff members I view as my friend, not as a client or a company that we work with. We send Christmas cards back and forth. We get together when they're in town and have dinner. It's just a really wonderful staff. They do customized itineraries, so it's not a cookie cutter type of itinerary. I sit down in February with them and we go through very detailed itineraries, and they make our wishes come true. So they take a look at our clientele, they look at what I would like to plan and where we want to go, and we have lots of say as a tour coordinator. I have a lot of say as to how I want the itinerary to be laid out, and they do everything possible to try to make that happen. They assist our group 24/7. So if it is midnight and we are stuck in Midway or O'Hare on our way home and the flight gets canceled, they are with us and make sure that we are always safe. They have nighttime security, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and their customer service is amazing. So if you have a child that's registered and confirmed for the trip and need to contact customer service, they are so great to work with. All right. The Washington, D.C. area packs a punch with all that it has to offer students. We sandwich in a lot in 3 days, and we want the itinerary really to match the value of your investment. So we are up early sightseeing all day and returning back to the hotel late at night. And some of eighth graders' favorite things, oh my gosh, it's hard to list their favorite, but sometimes we don't always go to an Orioles or Nationals game, but sometimes we do. But the favorite would be Arlington National Cemetery. They really find that place very powerful, as well as the wreath laying ceremony on the tomb of the unknown soldier. The Holocaust Memorial Museum is always a profound place to tour. Hazy Air and Space Center, oh, that was fabulous. And then the biggest one that is everybody's favorite is our Potomac dinner cruise. So we all get dressed up in some fancy clothes, and we go on a yacht cruise on the Potomac River, and we eat dinner, and then we dance the night away under the stars. It is absolutely an eighth grader's favorite. And then New York. New York is always a fan favorite with our eighth graders. It's definitely a great way to end our trip with all of the sights, sounds, even smells, and events that New York has to offer. We sandwich a lot in just 2 days. Some of the eighth graders' favorites are obviously the Statue of Liberty. They love going up in Rockefeller Center and looking over the entire skyline. 9/11. I mean, there's just nothing more powerful than standing where those buildings stood and then going through the museum. It is a very moving experience. And then Times Square is probably the highlight of kids' trip there because they get to people watch and see all sorts of sights along with the Broadway play. So we are currently planning. Now, those are some of the tentative sites. We try to hit all of those, but sometimes we have to make adjustments depending on availability. The cost of the trip is directly tied to what we plan to do on the trip. The trip price is all inclusive, and we're currently working on this year's itinerary, which is chocked full of fantastic experiences. Depending on availability and or large group restrictions, itineraries may be just adjusted a little bit. Sometimes with a large group like ours, usually 100 students, sometimes we have to stagger entrances into certain locations, but rest assured, all CMS students will experience the same events. So it isn't like bus one gets to see something that bus two doesn't. We never do that. We just may have to stagger our entrance times a little bit to get everybody through. So please trust that I will make the best decisions so that the investment matches the itinerary experience. All right, medical conditions. This is really, really important. If your child has a medical, physical, or emotional condition or issue, and you are unsure whether this is a good fit, this trip is a good fit for them, please, please, please email me to set up a time to talk by phone or in person. It's always best to err on the side of caution versus assuming like, they'll be fine. Just send them on the trip. It'll be good. We always want to make it a good decision for the child and not just assume that the child would be okay. So, you've been waiting for this information forever and ever and ever here. So, I'm going to go through this information. And then after I go through it, this is going to be a two-part video. The second one is going to be a lot shorter and it's going to walk you through step by step how to register. So, the first part is trip details. It runs from June 11th through the 15th, Sunday through Thursday. We get out of school on Thursday, June 8th. So, students will have a couple days to relax and then pack before we depart. The cost of the trip is $2,394. It's all inclusive. The only thing your child needs to bring money for is a souvenir if they want to buy anything. Now, last year with the uncertainty of COVID and the cancellation of the 2 prior years' trips, we had the payment protection plan included in the price of the trip. So, just as a reminder, last year we had the payment protection plan included in the price of the trip. This year, the payment protection plan, the PPP of $289 is going to be optional. So I want to make sure that you understand that because we did go through that quite extensively during the live presentation. So the flights and the airlines are yet to be determined. We always try to fly out of Terminal 2, Southwest Airlines for a variety of reasons, smaller airport, friendly staff, working with students, free luggage, but we may fly on Delta, American, or United out of Terminal 1. So if that is the case, sometimes baggage fees apply for those students that are traveling on that. We've only had 1 year out of all 10 years where we had the entire group, 100 students and 8 chaperones, all flying on one airplane. That's very rare. We probably will never have that again. So what we do is we take 2 flights, usually at 2 separate times, and the flights we try to coordinate to have them land within 15 minutes of one another. So just to kind of know that that is usually the case. Now, let's talk about the PPP here, the Payment Protection Plan. Each year, we learn new and different things to help kind of improve the experience of the following year. Prior to COVID, the PPP was optional. During the height of COVID and planning of the last 3 trips, the PPP was added to the total price of the trip to ensure everybody's peace of mind. Because if we collectively, as a group, because of COVID, decided to pull the plug in April and not go on the trip at all, and this was more like 2020 and 2021, when we canceled that trip, everybody got their money back minus the PPP. And there was that peace of mind, that reassurance. Last year, same thing. PPP was included. If a student got COVID 3 days prior to departure and needed to cancel, they got everything back minus the PPP. Now, this year, we're going to do something different. We're going to allow the families to have the decision back in your hands on whether you want to purchase the PPP or not. So the total price of the trip, $23.94, does not include the PPP. So with that said, I would highly encourage all families to consider purchasing the PPP because it will reduce your stress about potential or unforeseen events, maybe an injury, a broken leg, a funeral in the family, student is sick with COVID 3 days prior to departure, their sports team made it into the championship, or they just don't want to go anymore, because sometimes that happens. And you will have the financial peace of mind that you and your child can cancel up to the day of departure and get all your money back minus the PPP. Now, if you choose not to and roll the dice and not do the PPP, then you would incur a higher expense. Now, my intention is not to make this sound like a sales pitch at all, but only as helpful advice because I have seen families lose significant money. And that was more prior to COVID even coming around, and kind of roll the dice. And something unexpected came up, maybe a funeral in the family. And, they ended up losing more money than they wanted to, obviously. Think of the protection plans that we have on our house, on our car, on our property. Most of us really don't want to buy those protection plans because it's additional money out of our pocket, but we want them when we actually need them. So consider that. The PPP cost is $289 and it's not included in the total price of the trip. So as a family, you'll need to decide if you're going to purchase this or not, and that needs to be decided at the time of registration because it can't be added after that. Now, hopefully COVID's going to look very different in June. But as of today, here's how it's going to work with COVID. Basically, bottom line, if your child is feeling sick and has COVID-like symptoms 10 days prior to departure, we're just going to ask that you take a COVID test. We're not going to force you to take a COVID test, but we're just going to ask that you do that just out of the kindness and courtesy to the other people traveling. Participants should let me know if they test positive. And STA will continue to update me on what the venues and the restaurants and the events are requiring. So if they all of a sudden start to require masking again, we're going to follow those restrictions as well. If a student is sick, and this is kind of the bummer, but if the student is sick and has symptoms and tests positive for COVID prior to leaving for the trip, they won't be able to go. And I think we're so used to this now after 2.5 years, we know what this is all about. Um, because we don't obviously want to be considered a kind of a super spreader when we go on the trip because we're in close proximity to other students and staff on this trip, either in hotel rooms or in events and memorials and things like that, and on the airplane. So if a student has to cancel from the trip, the family would get all their money back minus the PPP if they bought the PPP. And then if the student we're not going to require vaccination to go on this trip. It's one of the things that I've always wanted to have that decision be in the family's hands of whether you want the child to be vaccinated or boosted. So STA and I do not require any sort of vaccination. The trip will follow and adhere, though, to any government or airline or restaurant or venue or destination regarding masking. Right now, like I said before, there's no masking requirement of any sort on any of the venues that we're going to be at. Really, the decisions for COVID and for all of this stuff is really made for the good of the group and everybody's safety. So I hope that you can appreciate and understand that. If you want to know more about School Tours of America's specific protocols regarding student travel and illnesses, you can certainly scan this code that's on the screen right now, and that will bring you right to their website and give you more of kind of commonly asked questions and things like that in regards to COVID and traveling. This is how we travel in DC. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. They are nice, luxurious coach buses that will be our home away from home. The bus drivers are incredibly talented, getting us safely from point A to point B. We'll travel by coach buses from DC to New York, so we don't fly from DC to New York. And it's a really good opportunity for kids to catch some Z's there because the trip there is like 3.5 hours long. Once we're in New York, we travel mostly on foot because we stay right in the heart of downtown Manhattan, and we won't see the coach buses until we're ready to board and go back to the airport to go home. Meals. The students get fed very, very well on this trip. Students can pack snacks if they want to. In fact, we highly suggest that they do. All of our restaurants are close to our events. They're quality, student-friendly locations. We love that. Our restaurants can accommodate dietary and allergic restrictions. Breakfast is usually at the hotel and consists of a buffet with a ton of things like waffles, pancakes, sausage, bacon, fruit, cereal, yogurt, toast, ton of things. For lunch, we usually go to food court locations where students will have lots of choices. And then before departing the bus, we'll give them $20 cash, and they can spend the $20 on their lunch meal as they wish. If they don't eat $20 worth of food, then they get to keep the remaining money. So that's cool. Sometimes kids come home with money in their pocket. And for dinner, we usually sit down at a dine-in restaurant where students get the opportunity to eat and socialize. Notice it does say a ball game there. We're not sure if we're going to do that. It might be a ball game or a Broadway play. So we do make that decision a little bit later. Our hotels are clean and safe and beautiful and usually positioned in a great spot right within the city, close to all of our activities. We pick hotels that are used to having kids stay at their hotel, which we love. There's 4 students to a room, and then STA hires nighttime security for our hotel floors, and I will explain that in just a second too. So, hotel and room assignments. All rooms will be quad occupancy, so there'll be 4 kids in a room. If your child wants to do a room with a different room configuration, like triple or double, there's an additional cost to do that. We don't have very many students do that option. I don't think we had any groups do it last year, but we do also offer that option. We can't have any students stay in a room by themselves, so you'll notice that there's no single option there. And there's a certain time frame that you'll be able to do that if you're going to request a triple or a double room. So in January, students are going to be given in class, in school, they're going to be given a packet of forms that they have to fill out. So they're going to bring that home to you. And we ask that you fill out the medical form. Students can fill out the other forms if they want to, but the medical form we ask all parents to fill out, the rooming request, and then the behavior contract. And then we ask that the student brings those forms back to school, and then it's my challenge, my work set out from January to March to create the rooming assignments. Rooming assignments will be organized between January and April, and once rooming groups are established, there's no changes that will be made. It is very much like a chess match, and so we definitely try to accommodate everybody's requests. Now, you guys, with that said, with quad rooms, we all know middle school friendships sometimes encounter struggles and inconsistencies throughout the year. When making rooming assignments, I always, always, always try to give the student at least one of their requests, one person. It's also important for everyone to feel included, though. So when I coordinate room assignments, it is like a chess match, and it's somewhat challenging to have everyone feel comfortable. But that's my main thing. We got to think for the good of the group. I'll try to make decisions that are best for all students. With that said, we are not in our hotel rooms very much at all. It's really only a place to kind of lay our heads down at night. We get in late, we get up early, and then we're off again. And once students are at breakfast or on the bus or at a site that we're seeing, they can hang out with whoever they want to. It's always my goal to make sure that each student has at least one person in their room that they have requested. If that's not possible for whatever global reason that maybe the student doesn't know about or a parent doesn't know about, because again, I want to make sure everybody feels included. I will have a conversation with the student one-on-one to see what best opportunity we can do at that time. Once hotel rooming assignments are submitted, then we can't make any changes. If you want to go to a double or a triple room, the student does, you need to wait to see if your child is confirmed. So you might think, well, they're registered. That registration doesn't mean confirmed, and I'll explain that in a second. So registration is open starting the 27th, which was the night of the presentation. It goes all the way to October 6th at midnight is when it closes. Now, the deadline to change to a double or triple room is by November 4th. So anything after the 4th, all the students will be in quad rooms only. So if you're choosing to do a double or a triple room, make sure you talk to the other families so that they're aware that they also are okay with the higher dollar amount. And then all three or two families will call STA directly and make those accommodations for the additional payment. Hotel. In regards to the hotel, we have a very firm guideline in place to ensure everybody's safety, and we have run this same guideline every single year, and we've never, ever, ever had any problems at the hotel with students. So knowing that, we have a large group meeting every night with the students when we come back to the hotel to kind of regroup, go through what went well that day, see if there's anything that we need to tell them for the next day, especially like what to wear, what the temperature is going to be, where we're going to be going, should they bring money with for souvenirs, are we going, souvenir shopping, that sort of thing. And then we get them in their rooms and tucked away for the evening. At no time, at no time will any other student enter another student's room for any reason whatsoever at all. So we definitely hold very firm to this policy. So if there's 4 kids in that room, there's no other kids that go in that room except those 4 students. If a student needs to get something from another student in another room, they can go to their door, they can knock on that door, and they can stand at the doorway, but they will not enter that room. Because I think we all know as parents, when we get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 middle schoolers in a hotel room, that doesn't make a recipe for success usually. So we don't have social gatherings in rooms. They don't gather down in the lobby. Really, to be honest, when they get back, they're so exhausted. They just want to get the large group meeting over. They want to get up to their room, get in their pajamas, hang out with their friends, and then hit the bed and get some sleep. When they go up to their rooms, we do a door check to make sure they're all in their rooms. We do make sure that every student is there. We do lock them or have them lock their doors, and then we do tape the door. And a lot of times kids are like, really, you tape the door? I don't get that. We could break through that tape, no problem. And that is true. They can definitely break the tape. It's more so for our security guards to hear the tape being broken if they're coming out of their room. And we have never, ever, ever had a kid break the seal on the tape to come out of the room to run around the hotel. We've just never had it. The only time that they've broken the seal is if somebody is sick and they need a chaperone, if somebody has a medical concern and they need a chaperone. So we've been very blessed to have such great Century kids. And then in the morning, we wake them up really early and we have a wake up call and a knock. So that's always fun to see them get out of bed and get ready to go. All right, hotel security. This is so important because number one for us is to make sure that everybody is safe. So School Tours of America hires security guards to stay on our floor. And they do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, the reason is we want to make sure any strangers or people that are not part of our group are not on our floor for any reason at all. The second thing that it does is it allows us to, as chaperones, to get a little bit of sleep before we're up early. Most of the chaperones, once we get everybody in their rooms and taped, we then go have a chaperone meeting to get us prepared for the next day. So a lot of times we don't see our hotel rooms until 1 in the morning. And then we're up at like 5:30. So we need to sleep fast and get energy as well. And so our security guards allow us to be able to do that. But if anything comes up in the middle of the night with a student, those security guards wake me or other chaperones up to make sure that we are addressing the situation. And we definitely really appreciate the fact that they have security because not every travel company does hire security guards. So we are very thankful for that. Traveling with a large group is much different than traveling with your family. So we just ask that the student be positive and flexible and know that it's an adventure. when you travel with 99 other students. This is a trip. It's not a vacation. It's different than a family vacation. They got to be patient because we're moving large groups of people through areas, but it is super fun. And it's a memory that they are going to remember forever. We have students now that, since we've run this trip for 10 years, we have students that have graduated high school and are in college. And when they come back to visit us at Century, they still talk about this trip, and they bring out their phones and they show pictures from this trip. They still have pictures on their phone. So it is a great opportunity to travel with friends, and the students will be well cared for the entire trip. So, registration information. What we're going to hand out to students is, and they can ask for this in school, is a white envelope. And inside that envelope has an STA brochure. It has a registration letter. It has step by step instructions on how to register. If students and parents obviously couldn't make the meeting, they can get one from Mrs. Goldberg. That's an English teacher on the hurricane side, or from me on the blizzard side. This pre-recorded YouTube video that you're watching is also going to help walk you through what you missed from the September 27th presentation. How long do you get to register? You're going to register anytime between September 27th or through midnight of October 6th. Know that after midnight on October 6th, the registration basically shuts down. Can kids still register after October 6th? They can, but they will know automatically that they'll be put on a wait list. Registration is not a first come, first serve basis. So if you register on October 6th, right before midnight, you are treated in the same vicinity and the same way as somebody who registered on the night of September 27th. Once registration closes, if we have 50 students that have registered, we're running with 50, and we're running with one bus when we get to DC. If we have more than 50 students and less than 100, we're running with two buses once we get to DC. If we have more than 100 students register for the trip, we then lock and load 100 spots and waitlist the remaining. And how do we choose who is the 100 students? I do not do that. It's done at School Tours of America. They conduct a random lottery for the spots for the trip, and then we open up a second bus if we have that many people interested. Based on the numbers of people that show up for the information night, how many people have been talking about it at school, and our past history, we've always taken two buses, 100 spots, ever since we've run the trip. So we have a lot of student and parent interest in this community. Remember, registration does not equal confirmed confirmation of the trip. All right, next part. How much do you pay at registration? So you have a couple of different options here. You have three different options. Option one is you simply pay $99. That's a registration fee. The $99 goes towards the total amount of the trip. That's without the PPP. And that's something you're going to have to decide as a family, right? Second option, you do $99, the registration fee, plus the PPP, so that payment protection plan. So that's a total of $388. And the third option is you can pay more than $388. We all know that there are families in Lakeville that could simply put down $2,000 right now and be able to pay for the whole trip at the time of registration. And that's really up to you and your family. So those are the three options. Why is the middle one highlighted? That's the one I'm highly suggesting that all families do, just in case we have some uncertainty in regards to the travel. The registration fee of $99 is applied to the price of the trip. And at any time or payment, you can pay more than the suggested amount if you want to, just not less. All right. How will you know if your child is confirmed or waitlisted? So if a lottery has to happen, School Tours of America will conduct that. Then in school, on around October 14th, students will get a list of confirmed students, and the waitlisted students will be notified. We never ever post a list of the waitlisted students because it's not something that we want to either make them feel bad about or nervous about or have other students make them feel bad about. Students will get to know what number they are on the wait list because I think that's important too. And the confirmed list will be posted on the trip website, which I'll show you in a second. Families will also receive a letter in the mail, slow mail, right? The week of October 11th, whether your child is confirmed or waitlisted. It's really a numbers game, folks. Students on the waitlist are put in order based on the lottery and will be cleared in that order if a spot opens up. STA will hold your registration. So, what happens if your student is waitlisted, your child's waitlisted? STA will hold your registration deposit just in case your student clears from the waitlist. If they never clear from the waitlist, they give you your deposit back. If at any time your child is waitlisted and you just want to cancel them, let's say it's February and you're like, I just don't think that they're going to clear from this waitlist. We want to get our money back and not be waitlisted anymore. You can definitely do that. You just have to call School Tours of America, ask to be canceled from the trip, and then email me as well. It's recommended, though, to keep your child's name on the wait list because there's always changes. There's always students that make, maybe their sports team made it into the championship. Maybe a student breaks their leg and is not unable to go, or there's a funeral in the family or something. So it's always advised to keep your child on the wait list. And if the student does clear from the wait list, you're going to be the first person I notify because I know everybody's waiting to hear. How do I make payments? You never, ever, ever send money to school. Okay, so there's one of two options. If you're looking at the screen, the one on the left is the easy payment option. This is what 99.9% of the families choose to do. And basically, it's a certain dollar amount that's charged to your credit card every month until April. So it's kind of a slow drip to pay for that account. The one on the right is a mail-in option. So School Tours of America will send you these little coupons in the mail, and you can fill those out and send in payments through the mail. Notice there is a $6 service charge with every time that you do that option, okay? Because it's a different type of paperwork that is involved with that. But notice in the middle, every account needs to be paid by April 2nd, 2023. If you want to look at a suggested payment plan, like a lot of times families say, well, how much should we be paying each month or each time? This would be a suggested payment plan. So it's kind of that slow drip as to how much to pay in order to make it to the total of $23.94. This is our website that we have house all of our information, all of our presentations, our forms, everything, all the announcements. So definitely you can scan it here or you can go to it with the website at the top. The cool thing about this website also is that when we get back, we post all of our pictures. So teachers take a ton of photos and then we post all of our pictures to this website and you can pull pictures off of your child and keep those for memory or keepsake. So definitely look at that website. Now, that's a ton of information, and I know this presentation is very long, but it's all very good and important information. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me anytime. I will be putting out a second video, and the second video is going to be literally about 6 minutes long, very short, showing you step by step on how to register. So we hope that you're considering the DC New York trip, and if you have any questions, please feel free to email me anytime. Thanks.